So with the Western world going mad, we've decided we're all moving to Hungary. Because at least in Hungary, they've got some brains, especially and not least on asylum seekers. They're refusing to pay a massive fine handed out by the European Union because they won't accept asylum seekers. During the period 2014 to about 2020, millions of asylum seekers came into Europe. And of course, Germany in particular took so many, it's completely changed the dynamic in the country. But Hungary said, no, we are not accepting asylum seekers. And if they come, we'll put them into detention camps until they leave. Well, for not accepting these asylum seekers, the European Union imposed a fine of 200 million euros. To give you an example, that's about 332 million Australian dollars. And Hungary just said, well, we're not paying. So the EU have given them one more deadline to pay. I think September 17 is the deadline, by which time if they don't pay this fine, then that amount of money will be deducted from what they receive from the EU budget. So that's what's happening, but Hungary are not impressed and they are unmoved. The government state secretary today said that if Brussels are so intent on having illegal migrants, then they can have all of ours. Have a listen.
The Hungarian government's anti-immigrant rhetoric was furthered when a senior official said Budapest would bus illegal migrants to Brussels.
Az Európai Unió, Brüsszel arra akarja kényszeríteni Magyarországot, hogy engedjük be azokat az illegális migránsokat, akiket eddig feltartóztattunk, akiket eddig 1 millió alkalommal tartóztattunk föl a magyar déli határnál, akkor Magyarország az európai eljárásrend lefolytatása után felajánlja ezeknek az illegális migránsoknak, hogy önkéntesen, ingyenesen, egy útra, akkor Brüsszelbe szállítjuk őket.
Now, of course, Caleb, that's a brilliant idea, but if they do bus all these illegal migrants to Brussels, then they'll get another EU fine for breaching their carbon emissions limits.
That'd be right.
But the leaders of Hungary have said this asylum seeker issue is an existential threat to national sovereignty and to social cohesion, and they are having no part of the EU's fetish for taking everyone from everywhere and allowing them to join their country.
They should be given carbon credits for putting them on buses instead of planes, to be perfectly honest. But they are so right, and they're the only country just about in Europe that is standing up against this nonsense. And it's hard to be a lone voice in the wilderness, but they're saying, look around Europe, and you only have to look around Europe. Look at the EU elections just a couple of months ago and the response, the overwhelming response of Europeans to the mass migration that they have seen in their countries. They don't like it. They're standing up against it because they've seen what it's done in terms of change of culture. They've seen what it's done in terms of the allocation of budgets. They've seen what it's done in terms of housing. And some of these things sound very familiar here in Australia, and not on the basis of illegal migration here, all on the basis of quite legal migration mostly. Hungary is the only country just about that is saying, no, we are not on board with this. And for that, they cop a 200 million euro fine. Is it any wonder that the UK pulled out of the European Union? Is it any wonder that Brexit got up? Because they saw this stuff coming. And this is the problem with big governmental organisations like the EU. Because, you know, if you've got all these different little countries with their different little agendas, how are they ever going to, you know, come together and adhere to one policy? It ain't going to work. And it's in situations like this where they try to impose clearly damaging policy across the entire continent. Someone has to say no, but then they're the leper for doing so.
What kind of policy is this that you are forcing European Union members to just take illegals? And if you don't, we'll fine you extortionately. Like, what kind of union is this? What kind of parliament is this? What kind of laws are you creating? You are literally changing the face of Europe forever, which has already happened. Those indigenous to these countries are completely up in arms about it. You're quite right to raise the European Union election that happened recently. Very comprehensive results centred around the fact the Europeans themselves are sick to death of seeing their countries change. And I'm not surprised it's Hungary who has taken action in this and said, we are just simply not complying. These guys are very, very strong about national identity. They've got some of the best measures in the world, encouraging Hungarian women to have as many babies as possible. Like they want to keep Hungary, Hungarian, period, and their own parliament takes very serious measures to ensure that can happen. So how dare the EU come along and just say, no, you too will be flooded with illegals, whether you like it or not. I wish we saw more of this in Europe, because the people of any number of these European countries would back their own government if their government was to put their foot down. It's a shame we're just not seeing more of this. Hopefully they'll all grow some gonads watching Hungary stand its ground and say, well, why aren't my government doing this as well?